Please, someone help us. The desperate cry rang out as if shattering the quiet of a stormy night. Stay with me, sweetheart. You're safe now, whispered Nurse Grace Miller, her voice gentle but urgent. Who are you? What happened? Demanded a trembling voice. I just woke up and he was here, stammered a young girl, barely 13, her eyes darting in panic as she clutched a swaddled infant close to her chest. Emily, right? We're going to get you help, said Dr. Carter as he knelt beside her, his tone firm yet compassionate. Please don't let him go away. I can't lose him, Emily pleaded, her voice breaking under the weight of unshed tears. Don't worry, Emily. We'll take care of both of you, Dr. Carter assured, his steady gaze promising safety. Are you alone? Asked Nurse Grace softly as she reached out to comfort the girl. Emily's whisper trembled. I have no one else. Before we dive deeper into this harrowing tale, if you're moved by Emily's story already, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this one. Make sure to hit that bell icon and follow along, because you won't want to miss how every mystery unfolds in our journey to uncover the truth behind Emily's painful past. Rain battered the pavement as the first light of dawn struggled to break through a thick veil of clouds. At St. Raphael's General Hospital, the atmosphere was unusually tense, charged with a sense of foreboding that no one had felt in recent times. The automatic glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a scene that would haunt everyone who witnessed it for days to come. In the dim, early morning light, Nurse Grace Miller was making her routine rounds. The rich aroma of strong brewed coffee mixed with the sterile scent of disinfectant as she hurried down the hall. Outside, thunder rumbled, and sporadic flashes of lightning painted eerie patterns on the walls, momentarily illuminating the hospital's facade. Grace's experienced eyes, honed by years of dealing with emergencies, suddenly widened as a lone figure emerged at the entrance. Drenched and trembling, a small girl stepped hesitantly into the hospital. Clutched tightly in her arms was a newborn swaddled in a worn, faded blanket. The child, with serene features and deep, soulful eyes, lay as if asleep in a fragile cocoon of innocence. Emily's face, streaked with rain and tears, was etched with a mixture of fear, confusion, and a determination that belied her tender age. Grace's heart pounded as she quickly approached the girl. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said softly, crouching to meet Emily's gaze. "You're safe now. What's your name?" "Emily," came the barely audible reply, each syllable trembling with emotion. Emily's eyes flitted about, as if searching for someone she once knew, while the baby stirred slightly in her arms. The infant's soft murmur of breath seemed to offer both solace and a burden too heavy to bear. At that moment, Dr. Carter, whose calm presence often masked the severity of emergencies, appeared from behind the nurse's station. His eyes, filled with both compassion and a hardened resolve, took in the scene instantly. "Grace, get a stretcher here, now," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for delay. Grace hurried off as Dr. Carter knelt beside Emily, speaking in a voice that was both reassuring and probing. "Emily, sweetheart, my name is Dr. Carter. I'm here to help you and your little one. Can you tell me what happened?" Emily's eyes, wide with fear and a silent plea for understanding, flickered with hidden sorrow. I just woke up and he was here," she stammered, her fingers clinging desperately to the blanket as if it held the key to a forgotten memory. The infant, later identified as Oliver, appeared remarkably peaceful despite the chaos surrounding him. Yet there was an inexplicable vulnerability in his slumber, a delicate hint that his fate was intertwined with mysteries too profound to be revealed in a single moment. Meanwhile, Nurse Grace returned with a stretcher and carefully guided Emily toward the emergency room. The corridors of St. Raphael's buzzed with hushed murmurs and exchanged glances of concern. Staff members, accustomed to routine emergencies, now found themselves piecing together the fragments of a puzzle that defied easy answers. Inside the ER, harsh fluorescent lights bathed the room in an unflattering glare, contrasting sharply with the soft, muted sorrow that enveloped it. Emily was placed gently on a bed, while Oliver was whisked away for a routine checkup. Dr. Carter's penetrating gaze never left Emily as he continued, "Emily, can you tell us anything about your family? Did someone send you here?" For a long, agonizing moment, Emily hesitated. Her lips quivered, as if on the verge of disclosing a secret too painful to voice. I couldn't stay there," she finally murmured, barely above a whisper. I couldn't take care of him." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implications no one dared to confront. As the medical team began their examinations, subtle hints emerged. A slight avoidance in Emily's gaze when asked about the baby's origin, the protective way she clutched the swaddled infant, and the quiet tremor in her voice that spoke of a burden far greater than a mere mistake. Outside the examination room, murmurs of speculation grew among the staff. Nurse Sophie Adams, known for her empathy and keen intuition, confided to Dr. Carter in hushed tones, "There's something odd about Emily. It feels like she's carrying a secret that's too heavy for her to bear." Dr. Carter nodded thoughtfully, his mind already racing through possibilities. "I believe there's more to this than meets the eye," he murmured, his voice resonating with concern and quiet resolve. "We must handle this with the utmost care." In the stillness that followed, Emily's eyes wandered toward the window where the storm raged on outside. Each flash of lightning illuminated her face, a mask of terror mingled with a desperate, silent hope for rescue. In that fragile moment, one could almost glimpse a spark of determination beneath the layers of fear, a spark that hinted at resilience yet to be fully awakened. A soft knock on the door interrupted the tense quiet. Laura Reynolds, a gentle social worker known for her unwavering empathy, entered the room. "Emily, I'm Laura," she said kindly, extending a hand that was as warm as it was inviting. "I know this is scary, but we're here to help you." Emily's eyes lingered on Laura's face, torn between mistrust and the need for comfort. The seed of cautious hope was planted, as though she sensed that someone finally cared enough to offer solace. Minutes ticked by like an eternity, and though the storm outside began to subside, the tempest within the hospital was only just beginning to take shape. Dr. Carter decided it was time to confer with Detective Harris, a determined investigator known for his commitment to protecting the vulnerable. Detective Harris entered, his face set in a mask of professional concern. "We're going to need to talk to you, Emily. I promise we'll be gentle," he assured, his voice imbued with a protective warmth. At that moment, as Emily gazed upon the peaceful slumber of Oliver, a tremor of terror and longing passed over her face. Something in her eyes hinted that the truth of her past was a fragile tapestry of memories she wasn't ready to unravel. The team sensed that beneath her guarded exterior lay a truth too painful to articulate, a truth that would soon drive events in ways none could have predicted. Amid the orchestrated flurry of medical checks and whispered conversations, fragments of Emily's past began to surface in her mind. Rain-soaked nights, muffled cries of despair, and a distant echoing voice urging her to flee. They all converged into a single, overwhelming torrent of emotion. It was as if her very soul was trying to recall a story that had long been buried beneath layers of fear and sorrow. The examinations finally concluded, and Dr. Carter leaned in close to Emily. "I need you to rest now, but know that we're not going to let anything happen to you or Oliver," he said firmly, yet with a tenderness that belied his authority. Emily nodded faintly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, mourning the loss of a past she could barely recall. As she drifted into a troubled sleep, the images of that stormy arrival, the gentle yet enigmatic face of Oliver, the compassionate expressions of Grace, Dr. Carter, and Laura, merged into a tapestry of both hope and heartbreak. Outside, the clouds began to break, and the first rays of sunlight promised a new day. But within the walls of St. Raphael's General Hospital, a quiet storm of emotions, secrets, and unresolved mysteries was gathering momentum. This was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge the very notion of innocence and ignite a relentless quest for truth. The rain had finally ceased outside, leaving the city streets slick and glistening under the reluctant embrace of early morning light. Inside St. Raphael's General Hospital, the sterile corridors buzzed with an urgency that belied the calm exterior of the building. In a quiet examination room, bathed in the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, Emily lay on a hospital bed, her gaze vacant yet fraught with an inner turmoil that belied her tender age. Nearby, the newborn, Oliver, rested quietly on a small examination table, swaddled in a worn blanket that had seen better days. Dr. Carter, the seasoned physician, with kind yet scrutinizing eyes, moved methodically around the room. With gentle precision, he began the preliminary examination of both Emily and Oliver. His hands, steady as ever, were quick to notice subtle signs that suggested this case was far from ordinary. The soft hum of medical devices and the occasional beep of monitors formed a background score to the unfolding drama. "Emily," Dr. Carter began, his voice measured and compassionate, "we're going to run some tests now to make sure you and little Oliver are okay. It's important that you understand everything we do here is to keep you safe." Emily's eyes, downcast and trembling, flickered briefly as if wrestling with a secret too heavy for her to share. I don't remember much," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. Grace Miller, still recovering from the shock of their arrival, adjusted the curtains to grant the room a semblance of privacy. Her face, usually marked by calm assurance, now revealed deep concern as she observed Emily's guarded expression. "It's all right, Emily. We're here for you," she whispered, her hand briefly brushing Emily's as she offered a comforting smile. While Dr. Carter proceeded with his examination, Nurse Sophie Adams, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, noted an unusual tenderness in the way Emily's body reacted to even the slightest touch. It was as if her nerves were wired to protect something deeply hidden, a truth that lay beneath the surface of her fragile composure. As the minutes passed, Dr. Carter's experienced eyes detected inconsistencies. "There's something peculiar here," he confided quietly to Nurse Sophie as he measured Emily's vitals. Her responses, the subtle pain in her eyes. "It's almost as if she's trying to hide something." Sophie nodded, her expression somber. "I've noticed it too, Doctor. It's like she's carrying a weight far heavier than we can imagine." Outside the examination room, whispers among the hospital staff began to weave a tapestry of concern. The gravity of the situation had drawn the attention of Child Protective Services and law enforcement. Detective Harris, a stern yet empathetic investigator with a reputation for handling sensitive cases, arrived to review the initial findings. His presence, marked by a quiet determination, signaled that the hospital was now part of a larger inquiry. In a private corner of the hospital, Dr. Carter gathered the key members of the team for a brief discussion. Emily's physical condition, while stable, indicates signs of long-term neglect and emotional trauma, he explained, his voice low and serious. There are small bruises and telltale marks that suggest she's been hurt repeatedly, perhaps by someone she once trusted. Detective Harris listened intently, his brow furrowing. "And what about Oliver?" he asked, referring to the baby with a measured tone that blended concern with professional detachment. Dr. Carter hesitated before replying. "Oliver appears healthy at first glance, but there's an inexplicable sense that he's more than just a victim of circumstance. The way Emily clutches him, the hesitation when asked about his origin, it raises questions about whether he truly belongs to her." The implication hung in the air like a storm cloud. A subtle twist in the narrative began to form, a possibility that Oliver might not be Emily's child at all, but rather a symbol of deeper, unspoken truths. It was a revelation that Detective Harris needed to explore further, yet he knew it required delicate handling. Back in the examination room, social worker Laura Reynolds entered with an air of gentle assurance. Her eyes, warm and inviting, met Emily's as she took a seat beside the bed. "Emily, I understand that this must be incredibly overwhelming," she said softly. "I'm here to listen, and I promise that everything you share will be treated with care." Emily's gaze shifted between Oliver's peaceful face and Laura's earnest expression. For a fleeting moment, the young girl's defenses wavered. I can't explain it all," she whispered, her voice catching on the edges of sorrow and confusion. "I just know that I couldn't keep him." Laura's heart ached at the simplicity and complexity of her words. "Sometimes not having all the answers is what makes things so difficult," she murmured. "But I'm here to help you piece it together, one step at a time." As the team began to arrange for a series of diagnostic tests, Dr. Carter quietly communicated with the laboratory technicians about the need for a comprehensive physical examination. "We must ensure that there are no hidden injuries, both visible and internal," he instructed, aware that even the slightest oversight could have grave consequences for Emily's well-being. In a quiet interlude, as Emily rested against a pile of crisp hospital linens, her eyes fluttered open briefly to stare at the ceiling. The muted light reflected a myriad of unspoken emotions, fear, regret, and a longing for safety. It was in that silent moment that the layers of her past began to emerge, like fragments of a broken mirror piecing together an image too painful to behold. She recalled dim memories of a chaotic home, the harsh words of a disinterested parent, and the oppressive presence of a figure who had instilled both fear and despair. Detective Harris, meanwhile, conducted his preliminary inquiries with the utmost sensitivity. In hushed conversations with hospital security and a few discreetly chosen staff members, he began to sketch a rough timeline of events. "There's a pattern here," he remarked to Dr. Carter in a quiet hallway. "Emily's story doesn't quite add up. The timeline of injuries, the inconsistent details. It's as if she's shielding herself from a truth too devastating to confront." Dr. Carter nodded gravely. "I believe that in her attempt to protect herself, she's built up barriers. These barriers are not just physical, but emotional as well, and sometimes those barriers can reveal more than they hide." As the day unfolded, the hospital became a microcosm of whispered speculations and heartfelt concern. In the midst of sterile corridors and humming machines, the human stories of survival, vulnerability, and hidden pain interwove into a narrative that defied simple explanation. Emily's examination concluded, and Dr. Carter leaned down once more, his voice a soothing blend of professional reassurance and empathetic care. "Emily, you are incredibly brave. I want you to know that we're not just treating your physical wounds. We're here to help heal the emotional ones too. For now, rest. Let us take care of you." With a fragile nod, Emily allowed herself to drift into a fitful sleep, the rhythm of the machines lulling her into a temporary escape from the torment of her reality. In the quiet recesses of the hospital, Nurse Grace returned to check on her patients. Her eyes, weary yet determined, briefly met those of Detective Harris as they passed in the corridor. "We need to tread carefully," she whispered. "Emily's story is far from over, and every detail matters." Detective Harris's eyes held a promise of protection and relentless pursuit of truth. "I won't let her suffer alone," he murmured, his resolve firm and unwavering. Outside, as the first tentative rays of sunlight began to filter through the clouds, the hospital buzzed with renewed urgency. The collective mission of the medical team, the social services, and law enforcement was now clear. Uncover the hidden truths behind Emily's silence, protect her from further harm, and determine the true origin of little Oliver. a mystery that could change everything they thought they knew. In a private meeting room, Dr. Carter convened with his colleagues to discuss the next steps. Charts, test results, and fragmented memories of a troubled past were spread out before them like pieces of an unsolvable puzzle. "We must consider all possibilities," he stressed, his tone measured yet passionate. "There's an underlying narrative here that we're only beginning to grasp. We owe it to Emily and to Oliver to uncover every detail." The room fell silent as each member of the team contemplated the enormity of their task. It was a moment of shared vulnerability and unspoken commitment, a promise that, despite the darkness that had shrouded Emily's world, they would be the light that guided her towards safety and healing. As the day wore on, the hospital's corridors, once echoing with routine and detachment, now resonated with a palpable mix of hope and heartache. Emily, despite her tender age and the immense burden she carried, had unwittingly become a beacon of resilience. Her journey, marred by pain and uncertainty, was also one of quiet defiance, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure even the most harrowing of circumstances. In that transformative space, where sterile clinical precision met raw, unfiltered emotion, a silent promise was made. The promise of a fresh start, of answers that would someday mend the fractures of a broken past, and of a future where both Emily and Oliver could finally feel safe, cherished, and free. The sterile silence of the hospital room was pierced only by the low hum of monitors and the soft rustle of linens. In the wake of the early morning's chaos, Emily lay awake, staring blankly at the ceiling. The dim fluorescent lights danced over her face, revealing traces of bruises and faded marks, silent evidence of a history she dared not speak of. Oliver slept soundly in his crib, his tiny chest rising and falling in a gentle rhythm, oblivious to the storm that lay beneath the surface of his caretaker's troubled eyes. Across the room, social worker Laura Reynolds sat down beside Emily's bed, her warm presence a stark contrast to the clinical chill of the environment. "Emily," Laura began softly, "I know this is difficult, but sometimes speaking our truth can help us heal. Can you tell me about what happened before you came here?" Her voice was gentle yet insistent, a lifeline extended in the midst of overwhelming silence. Emily's gaze dropped to her trembling hands. For a long, painful moment, she searched for the courage to unravel the tightly wound knots of her past. Finally, in a whisper that trembled like fragile glass, she said, "It wasn't always like this. I remember memories of darkness, a home that was supposed to be safe, turned into a place of fear." Laura leaned in closer, her eyes filled with compassion. "I'm here for you, Emily. You can trust me." The room seemed to hold its breath as Emily's eyes filled with tears and she began to speak. "I used to live in a house that was full of loud voices and cold stares. My mother, Mrs. Thompson, she was kind once, or so I thought, but things changed. So much changed." Emily's voice faltered, and the sound of a distant drip from the faucet punctuated her silence. The room fell quiet for a few seconds before Emily continued, her voice barely audible. "My stepfather, he wasn't gentle. I remember his angry shouts, the fear that clung to me like a second skin. Every day I lived in constant terror. I felt invisible, yet every harsh word burned me inside." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, each word etched with the pain of a secret too heavy for a child to bear. Laura reached out, taking Emily's hand in hers. "You are not to blame for any of this, Emily. You did what you had to do to survive. You're incredibly brave for sharing this with me." Her words, filled with tender reassurance, slowly began to stitch together the fragmented pieces of Emily's battered soul. As the emotional weight of her confession lifted ever so slightly, a knock came at the door. Detective Harris entered, his presence as solemn as ever, yet laced with an undeniable empathy. "Emily," he said quietly, "we need to understand everything that happened, so we can protect you and Oliver." His tone was firm, but not unkind, offering the promise of justice without retribution. Emily's eyes darted to him, a mix of fear and hope swirling within. I want to be safe, she admitted, voice wavering. Detective Harris pulled up a chair and sat at her bedside. That's exactly why we need the truth. I promise you, Emily, that by telling us what happened, you're taking a powerful step toward reclaiming your life. His words resonated with a deep, protective sincerity. Taking a deep breath, Emily's story began to spill forth, a cascade of memories that had long been buried. I remember nights filled with terror. I'd hide under my bed, the darkness my only friend. I'd hear him coming, his heavy footsteps, and I'd curl up, praying that the storm of his anger would pass. I tried to be brave. I tried to keep everything hidden, even from myself. The raw emotion in her voice turned the sterile room into a confessional of pain and resilience. Detective Harris listened intently, his pen scribbling notes as Emily's narrative unfolded. "And what about Oliver?" he gently probed. "How does he fit into your story?" Emily hesitated, her eyes shifting toward the sleeping infant. I don't know how he came to be with me. One moment I was in a haze of confusion and pain, and then he was here. I remember being told to come to the hospital, but everything else, it's all a blur." Her voice dropped to a pained whisper. "Sometimes I wonder if I did something wrong, if his presence means that I'm responsible for this darkness." Laura interjected softly. "Emily, you must understand. What happened to you was not your fault. Oliver's arrival, though shrouded in mystery, does not define your worth. You deserve love, care, and safety." Her words washed over Emily, bringing a glimmer of solace to her tormented mind. Detective Harris leaned forward, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and sorrow. "We have reasons to believe there's more to this than meets the eye," he stated. "The way you speak of Oliver, the hesitance when discussing his origin, it suggests that there might be a deeper story, one that involves someone else. Are you sure you remember everything correctly?" A tremor ran through Emily as she looked down, her hands clenching the blanket tightly. I'm not sure," she admitted. "There are moments of clarity, and then others when everything seems like a nightmare I can't escape. Sometimes I remember a face of someone who made me feel even more trapped." Her eyes widened as the memory surfaced, and tears welled up once again. "It was my stepfather. His presence in those memories. It's unbearable." A heavy silence filled the room. Detective Harris and Laura exchanged a glance, their expressions somber. Dr. Carter, who had been quietly monitoring the conversation from the doorway, stepped in gently. "Emily, it's very important for you to know that you are not alone. We're here to help you through this process. Every detail you share will aid us in ensuring your safety and the safety of Oliver." Emily's voice grew steadier as she recounted the harrowing details, the nights of terror, the isolation, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal that came from someone who was supposed to protect her. "I always thought that love meant safety," she murmured. "But instead I learned that sometimes the people who are meant to shield you can also be the ones who cause you the most harm." The words echoed in the small room, leaving an indelible mark on everyone present. At that moment, Laura reached for a tissue and gently dabbed at Emily's tear-streaked face. "Your story is painful, but by sharing it, you're taking back your power," she said softly. "You deserve healing. And we're going to help you get there." Detective Harris's voice broke through the silence. "Emily, based on what you've told us, we're initiating further investigations to piece together the full timeline. This includes speaking with those who might know more about your family history. I need you to know that every step we take is for your protection. We will ensure that your stepfather faces the consequences of his actions." His words, though resolute, carried an undercurrent of compassion that resonated with Emily. A heaviness lifted ever so slightly from Emily's shoulders as the truth, long held captive within her, finally began to emerge. I remember the fear. Every time he would shout, I felt like I was disappearing, she recalled, her voice a mix of sorrow and reluctant acceptance. And then there was this overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone in my suffering, that even in my darkest moments there was a part of me that held on to hope that one day I would find a way out. Dr. Carter gently placed a reassuring hand on her arm. You are strong, Emily, and your resilience is remarkable. It's time for us to focus on your recovery and the safety of Oliver. The truth you've shared is a critical step, and it will help us protect you moving forward. As the conversation drew to a close, the once oppressive silence of the room was replaced by a quiet determination. The pieces of Emily's broken past, though painful, were slowly coming together to form a narrative of survival. The hospital, once merely a place of clinical routine, had transformed into a sanctuary, a place where hidden truths were finally given a voice, and where hope began its quiet ascent. In the days that followed, Emily's testimony sparked a flurry of activity. Detective Harris coordinated with local law enforcement, ensuring that every detail was documented, every memory accounted for. Laura and Nurse Grace made frequent visits, their presence a constant reminder to Emily that she was no longer alone. Dr. Carter organized a series of counseling sessions determined to mend the deep emotional scars that lay beneath her fragile exterior. Amidst the controlled chaos, Emily found small moments of reprieve. In the soft glow of early evening, as she lay in her hospital bed, she would sometimes smile at the sight of Oliver, his tiny fingers curled around a plush toy or his delicate lashes fluttering in sleep. Those moments, brief and precious, reminded her that even in the midst of darkness, there were sparks of light waiting to be nurtured. One afternoon, while the hospital corridors buzzed with quiet determination and the soft hum of routine, Emily found herself alone in a quiet corner of the hospital garden. The scent of blooming flowers and the gentle rustling of leaves provided a stark contrast to the sterile environment inside. Sitting on a weathered bench, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the gentle caress of the wind on her face, and to let the raw emotion settle within her. In that moment of solitude, memories of her past mingled with the promise of a future yet to be written. She thought of her mother, Mrs. Thompson, whose absence had haunted her every waking moment. A storm of conflicting emotions surged within her, a longing for maternal love intertwined with a deep sense of betrayal. The revelation of her stepfather's abuse was a bitter pill to swallow, yet it also served as a catalyst for a transformation that was already underway. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the garden, Emily made a silent vow. She would no longer be defined by the pain of her past. With every heartbeat, she would reclaim the fragments of her shattered identity, piecing them together into something resilient, something beautifully defiant. Oliver, with his innocent, untroubled slumber, would be the living testament to her strength, a constant reminder that even the most broken souls could find a way to mend. Back in the hospital, the team rallied around her. Detective Harris, Laura, Dr. Carter, and even Nurse Grace knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but they were committed to ensuring that Emily and Oliver received every ounce of protection and care they deserved. The seeds of justice had been sown, and the collective mission was clear: to stand as guardians against the darkness, to be the light in the midst of despair. That night, as the hospital slowly quieted, and the soft murmur of the city lulled the weary souls into uneasy rest, Emily's whispered words seemed to echo in the silence. I am not alone. I am more than my past. I will rise. And in that promise, the foundation for a future of healing, hope, and redemption was laid. A future where truth and compassion would triumph over the shadows of yesterday. The sterile corridors of St. Raphael's General Hospital no longer echoed solely with the soft beeping of monitors and murmurs of medical staff. A new undercurrent of urgency and resolve had taken over. In a private consultation room near the ER, Dr. Carter and Detective Harris huddled together over scattered reports and witness statements. Their eyes, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths, met in a silent agreement. They would protect Emily and Oliver at all costs. Detective Harris cleared his throat, his voice low but resolute. "Emily's testimony has uncovered layers we never imagined," he began. "We're dealing with a case that goes far beyond routine neglect. It's time we bring all the necessary resources to ensure her safety, and that of little Oliver." His tone carried a mix of determination and compassion that resonated deeply with everyone present. Across the room, social worker Laura Reynolds, ever the empathetic beacon, listened intently to the unfolding plan. "We need to involve Child Protective Services immediately," she asserted, her voice firm yet gentle. "Emily's history, her expressed fear, everything indicates that she's been left to fend for herself in a hostile environment." Her eyes, brimming with both sorrow and resolve, scanned the room for allies. Dr. Carter nodded slowly. "I've already spoken to Dr. Morgan, our child psychologist, and Dr. Mitchell from pediatrics. They both agree that we must conduct a full, comprehensive examination, not just of Emily's physical wounds, but of the psychological scars she bears. We owe it to her to leave no stone unturned." His voice, imbued with the gravity of the situation, filled the room with a sense of collective purpose. The next few hours unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. Detective Harris coordinated discreet interviews with hospital staff who had come into contact with Emily, while Laura reached out to external agencies for immediate support. Meanwhile, Dr. Carter organized a series of tests and evaluations. In one corner of the bustling hospital, Nurse Grace Miller made final adjustments to Emily's bed, ensuring that every comfort was provided in this temporary sanctuary of safety. Later that afternoon, in a stark, light-filled conference room at the hospital, a meeting was convened to discuss the next steps in Emily's case. The room was a flurry of determined faces. Detective Harris, Dr. Carter, social worker Laura, Nurse Grace, Dr. Morgan, and even Mrs. Thompson, Emily's estranged mother, had been summoned. Although Mrs. Thompson's arrival had been unexpected, her presence added another complex dimension to an already intricate narrative. Mrs. Thompson, clad in a somber navy coat and carrying an air of regret, hesitated as she entered the room. Her eyes, once filled with maternal warmth, now shimmered with the unmistakable hue of sorrow and guilt. I heard about what happened," she stammered, her voice wavering. "I want to help, but I don't know where to start." Her admission, raw and unguarded, sent ripples of emotion through the assembly. Detective Harris took a measured step forward. "Mrs. Thompson, we're here because Emily's safety is our highest priority. This case is complex, and every piece of the puzzle matters. We need your full cooperation. If you truly care for Emily, you must be willing to face the painful truths and work with us to protect her." His words, though stern, carried a note of compassion that underscored the delicate nature of family betrayal and neglect. A tense silence filled the room as Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how to help her," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was afraid of what might happen if I intervened." The confession, laced with remorse, revealed the cracks in the facade of a mother who had once been seen as a pillar of support. Laura stepped in gently. "We understand fear can paralyze, but today we need to focus on healing and protection. Emily's been through so much. We're not here to judge, but to help her rebuild her life." Her words bridged the gap between condemnation and forgiveness, offering a tentative pathway toward reconciliation. Dr. Morgan, who had been quietly reviewing medical records in the corner, finally spoke up. Our evaluations indicate that Emily has not only suffered physical abuse, but also deep emotional trauma. We're recommending an intensive therapeutic program, one that includes regular counseling and psychological support. This isn't just about immediate safety, it's about long-term healing. His tone, clinical yet empathetic, underscored the gravity of the situation. Amid the flurry of discussions, Detective Harris revealed a piece of evidence that sent a shockwave through the room. We've secured statements from multiple witnesses that indicate Emily's stepfather was actively present during the times of abuse, he declared, laying down a file thick with documented testimony and photographs. He has been apprehended at a nearby location, but we suspect he might have ties to other cases of abuse in the area. The revelation was a dramatic twist, a glimmer of justice in the midst of pervasive pain. Mrs. Thompson's face contorted with a mix of relief and guilt. I always suspected something was wrong, but I was too scared to acknowledge it, she admitted. Now that I know, I want to help. I want to make it right. Her words, though tentative, signaled the beginning of a possible redemption. A chance to be the mother Emily had so desperately needed. The meeting continued with plans for immediate intervention. Detective Harris outlined the next steps. We will continue to investigate all connections to ensure that every person involved is held accountable. In the meantime, Emily and Oliver will remain under constant care at this facility until we can secure a safer, more permanent environment for them. His declaration was met with a unanimous nod from the team, a testament to their shared commitment to justice and healing. Outside the meeting room, in a quiet corner of the hospital's garden, Nurse Grace took a rare moment for herself. Seated on a stone bench beneath a blooming magnolia tree, she let the soft breeze carry away the heaviness of the day. The vibrant hues of the garden, a stark contrast to the clinical white of the hospital walls, reminded her that even in the darkest times, nature's beauty persisted, a silent promise of renewal and hope. Meanwhile, back inside, Dr. Carter and Dr. Morgan began drafting a comprehensive treatment plan tailored for Emily. We need to address both her physical recovery and her emotional well-being, Dr. Carter emphasized. Every scar, every tear tells a story of survival. Our goal is to ensure that she not only recovers, but eventually thrives in an environment free of fear. Dr. Morgan added, it's imperative that we involve specialists in trauma therapy. The sooner we start, the better the chances of breaking the cycle of abuse. The collaborative energy was palpable as team members moved purposefully, their tasks clearly defined and their mission singular: to shield Emily and Oliver from further harm and to begin the long journey toward recovery. In every corner of the hospital, from the bustling corridors to the quiet meeting rooms, the spirit of collective guardianship reigned. A few days later, Detective Harris returned to update the team. In a private interview with Emily, he gently explained, "Based on our investigation, your stepfather has been detained. We have gathered sufficient evidence to press charges. I know this is overwhelming, but it's a step toward ensuring that you and Oliver are safe from him, and from any future harm." His words, delivered with the utmost care, sparked a flicker of hope in Emily's weary eyes. Though the pain of the past would not vanish overnight, the promise of accountability and protection offered a fragile lifeline. Emily's reaction was a mixture of disbelief and cautious relief. "Does this mean he won't hurt me anymore?" she asked in a soft, trembling voice. Detective Harris knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "That's our commitment, Emily. We're here to protect you every step of the way. You're not alone in this fight." His voice was a soothing balm, though the scars of her past remained etched in her silent tears. In the following days, as the legal process unfolded, the hospital became a hub of coordinated care and investigation. Laura made daily visits to check on Emily's emotional state, while Dr. Carter and his team monitored her physical recovery. Mrs. Thompson, though still grappling with her own demons, began to attend counseling sessions alongside Emily, their fragile bond slowly knitting together through shared vulnerability and a mutual desire for healing. One afternoon, in a quiet conference room with a panoramic view of the city skyline, Dr. Carter gathered the team for an update on Emily's case. "Our efforts have begun to bear fruit," he stated, his voice a blend of relief and determination. "The evidence against your stepfather is solid, and we're working closely with law enforcement to ensure that justice is served. More importantly, our focus now shifts to your ongoing recovery, Emily. We want you to know that your safety, both now and in the future, is our highest priority." His words, though clinical, were imbued with a warmth that resonated with every member of the team. As the days turned into weeks, the once tense atmosphere of the hospital gave way to a measured, hopeful rhythm. Emily attended regular therapy sessions with Dr. Morgan, who introduced creative methods such as art and music therapy to help her express emotions that words could not capture. In one memorable session, Emily painted a series of images, a shattered mirror slowly being mended by vibrant interlocking pieces. The painting, a raw portrayal of her fractured past and emerging resilience, became a symbol of her journey toward healing. At the same time, Detective Harris and his team pursued leads on other potential victims, determined to dismantle the network of abuse that had ensnared so many vulnerable lives. His investigation revealed disturbing patterns, suggesting that Emily's case might be the tip of an iceberg, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the community. "This is not an isolated incident," he confided in a confidential briefing with his colleagues. "We have to act quickly to prevent any more children from suffering." His words, though measured, carried the weight of a mission that extended far beyond a single case. In the midst of these developments, Nurse Grace continued to provide Emily with a steady, comforting presence. On a cool evening as dusk fell over the hospital, Grace sat by Emily's bedside, reading aloud from a collection of poems about strength and renewal. "Every day is a new beginning," she whispered, her voice soft and soothing. "Remember, Emily, you are a survivor, and survivors shine, even in the darkest of nights." Emily listened intently, her eyes half closed in the comforting cocoon of Grace's gentle care. By the time the legal process gained momentum and the trial date loomed on the horizon, Emily's world had shifted in ways she could scarcely imagine. The once oppressive darkness was slowly being replaced by glimmers of light, moments of laughter in therapy sessions, tender interactions with Mrs. Thompson, and the reassuring presence of a team determined to see her through. Though scars remained, both visible and hidden, Emily began to see a future where hope and healing were possible. In one final meeting before the trial, Detective Harris sat down with Emily in a quiet, sunlit room. "You've shown remarkable courage, Emily," he said gently, his eyes meeting hers with sincere admiration. "What you've endured is unimaginable, but your strength is undeniable. This trial is not just about justice for you, it's about ensuring that no other child suffers in silence." Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but there was a newfound determination in her gaze, a promise to herself that she would reclaim her life, no matter how daunting the road ahead might be. As the day drew to a close, the hospital's corridors grew quiet once more, but the echoes of that determined spirit lingered in every corner. The collective mission to protect Emily and Oliver was far from over. It had only just begun. Yet in the midst of pain and uncertainty, a beacon of hope shone brightly, a testament to the power of compassion, justice, and unwavering human resilience. The soft hum of hospital corridors had given way to a quieter, more hopeful rhythm as the days began to mend what had been broken. In a sunlit corner of St. Raphael's General Hospital, Emily sat quietly by the window, gazing at the gentle morning light that seeped through the glass. Outside, the city stirred with new life. Inside, however, a small miracle was beginning to take shape. Following weeks of intense examinations, heartfelt confessions, and a tumultuous legal process, Emily's case had reached a turning point. Her foster care plan was in motion, and the hospital had arranged for a preliminary visit from a prospective foster family known for their compassion and experience with sensitive cases. Mrs. Amelia Collins and her husband, Mr. Henry Collins, both kind, wise, and deeply empathetic, had earned a reputation in the community for their open hearts and safe home. Their promise was simple: a sanctuary where Emily and little Oliver could finally breathe, heal, and flourish. That afternoon, as a gentle breeze fluttered the curtains in Emily's room, Nurse Grace Miller entered with a warm smile and a carefully wrapped envelope. "Emily, I have a special visitor here for you," she said softly, her eyes twinkling with anticipation. "Mrs. Collins is here to meet you and Oliver." Emily's heart raced at the thought. The idea of leaving the familiar, painful as it had been, and stepping into a new world was daunting. Yet in her eyes there was a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, a safer future was possible. Moments later, the door swung open to reveal Mrs. Amelia Collins, a woman whose presence radiated warmth and gentleness. Dressed in a light blue cardigan with a floral scarf around her neck, she extended a welcoming hand. "Hi, Emily. I'm Amelia, and this is my husband, Henry," she said, smiling kindly. Henry, tall and with an easy, reassuring demeanor, nodded in greeting. "We're so glad to finally meet you both," he added. In that first encounter, something extraordinary happened. Despite the deep scars of her past, Emily felt a spark of connection. The Collinses didn't rush to ask questions. Instead, they shared stories of their own lives, tales of overcoming adversity, rediscovering joy, and embracing the unexpected gifts life sometimes offers. Their voices, filled with gentle conviction, wove a tapestry of hope that contrasted sharply with the darkness of Emily's memories. Later that day, the Collins family invited Emily into a cozy living room, filled with soft furnishings, family photos, and the comforting aroma of freshly baked cookies. In a quiet, sun-dappled corner of their home, Henry showed Emily a small garden bursting with sunflowers, golden, bright, and unmistakably joyful. "These sunflowers," he explained, "always remind me that even after the darkest night, the sun will rise again." As Emily listened, her mind drifted to Oliver. The tiny infant, with his peaceful slumber and delicate features, represented everything fragile yet full of potential. "Do you think," Emily asked hesitantly, "if I come with you, I could learn how to take care of him better?" Mrs. Collins's eyes softened as she replied, "Absolutely, Emily. We believe that every child deserves the chance to grow, to learn, and to love. You're already showing so much care for Oliver. With a little guidance, you can become everything you want to be for him." The conversation flowed naturally, with moments of laughter punctuating the air, a stark contrast to the grim atmosphere that had once dominated Emily's world. Yet, amid the gentle reassurances, a twist emerged. During a quiet moment when Emily was exploring a corner of the Collins home, she discovered an old family album hidden on a shelf. As she flipped through its pages, she saw photographs of a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to her. The image of that smiling child, framed by golden curls and bright blue eyes, stirred something deep within her. Later that evening, when everyone gathered for dinner in a warmly lit dining room adorned with delicate chandeliers and rustic decor, Emily couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. "Mrs. Collins," she ventured softly, "this album, it shows a little girl who looks so much like me. Who is she?" Mrs. Collins exchanged a glance with Henry before replying. "That's our daughter Eleanor," she said, her voice tinged with both nostalgia and a quiet sadness. "She was taken from us many years ago due to circumstances we still haven't fully understood. We've never stopped hoping for her return, but in the meantime, we've devoted our lives to helping children who need a safe haven." The revelation sent a jolt through Emily. A twist she hadn't expected, this connection between her and the Collins family deepened her bond with them. She felt as if destiny had quietly intertwined their lives, a shared past marked by loss and a collective yearning for healing. As days turned into weeks, the Collinses worked tirelessly to create a nurturing environment for Emily and Oliver. They enrolled Emily in art therapy classes, where she discovered that painting allowed her to express emotions that words could not capture. One afternoon, as she worked on a canvas filled with bold strokes of red and gold, Emily found herself depicting a vibrant sunflower emerging from a dark, cracked earth, a symbol of her own resilience and hope. Henry, too, took a personal interest in helping Emily. In their quiet moments together, he shared stories of his own struggles and the lessons he'd learned from life's harshest blows. "There's a beauty in the scars we carry," he told her one evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "They remind us of what we've survived, and they're proof that we're still standing. You, Emily, are one of the strongest people I've ever met." His words, sincere and laden with empathy, stirred something new in her, a budding belief that her future could be brighter than her past. Yet even as hope began to blossom, echoes of the past occasionally disrupted the fragile tranquility of her new life. One rainy evening, as the wind howled outside and the lights flickered ominously, Emily received a disturbing phone call. Detective Harris's voice, firm and protective, broke the tense silence. "Emily, I need you to stay with us tonight at the hospital. We've received a tip that there may be further threats connected to your case." Fear gripped her, but with the Collinses by her side, she felt fortified. Mrs. Collins reassured her, "We're with you every step of the way." That night, as they gathered around her bedside in the hospital, the combined strength of the foster family and the protective network of law enforcement enveloped her in a cocoon of safety. Though the storm raged outside, inside, the sense of unity and care dispelled the shadows of fear. In the following days, legal arrangements were solidified, ensuring that Emily and Oliver would soon be transferred to a safe, long-term foster placement with the Collins family. The process, though filled with bureaucratic hurdles and moments of uncertainty, was driven by a shared conviction that justice and care must prevail. Detective Harris continued to follow up on the case, promising that no stone would be left unturned until every threat was neutralized. One afternoon, in the quiet sanctum of the Collins living room, Emily sat across from Mrs. Collins while Henry gently rocked Oliver in his arms. "I've been thinking a lot," Emily began tentatively, "about my past, my fears, and what I want for our future. I'm scared, yes, but I'm also ready to learn and grow. I want to be a good mum to Oliver, even if I'm still learning how to take care of myself." Mrs. Collins reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You already are a wonderful mother, Emily," she said softly. "Every day you show a strength that inspires me. It's not about being perfect. It's about loving and nurturing. And we're here to help you every step of the way." Over the next several weeks, the atmosphere in the Collins home transformed into a blend of healing rituals and hopeful celebrations. Family dinners became sessions of shared laughter and gentle teasing, and quiet evenings were spent under starlit skies, where Henry pointed out constellations and told stories of heroes who overcame insurmountable odds. In a particularly poignant moment, during a celebratory dinner marking the official transfer of custody, Detective Harris stood up to speak. "Today," he announced in a calm, measured tone, "we are not just marking the beginning of a new chapter for Emily and Oliver, but also affirming our commitment to protect every vulnerable soul. Your courage, Emily, and your care for Oliver show us that hope is a powerful force. May this new beginning be filled with light, love, and the promise of a brighter future." His words, met with resounding applause from those gathered, resonated deeply with everyone present. As the sun set on that transformative day, Emily found herself standing on the porch of the Collins home, watching the horizon glow with the hues of dusk. The trials of her past had not vanished, but in their place was a tentative promise of renewal. The gentle rustling of leaves, the distant laughter of children playing, and the soft murmur of a new life all around filled her with a cautious optimism. In that moment, as she cradled Oliver close, Emily silently vowed to herself she would embrace the future, no matter how uncertain, and forge a path of resilience and love. The Collins family, with their open arms and compassionate hearts, had given her the tools to mend her broken spirit, and in return she was determined to become the beacon of hope not only for Oliver, but also for herself. The hospital's sterile corridors had gradually faded into memory as a new chapter of healing and hope began to unfold. Now nestled within the comforting walls of the Collins home, Emily found herself standing at the crossroads of her past and her future, a fragile balance between the scars of yesterday and the promise of tomorrow. It was early morning, and soft sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, casting gentle patterns on the hardwood floor. In the quiet of the Collins living room, Emily sat curled up on a worn but inviting armchair, clutching a well-thumbed journal. The pages were filled with scribbled thoughts, raw emotions, and tentative dreams of a better life. Oliver slept peacefully in a baby crib across the room, his quiet breaths the steady pulse of new beginnings. Henry Collins, ever the pillar of calm wisdom, had been tending to the garden outside, a small sanctuary of wildflowers and sunflowers that he lovingly maintained. Today he invited Emily to join him. Hesitantly, she stepped outside and was greeted by the warm embrace of a spring morning. The air was alive with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming petals, a stark contrast to the cold sterility of the hospital. As they walked along the garden path, Henry paused to pluck a bright sunflower and handed it to her. "Every sunflower follows the light," he said softly, "and sometimes we must choose to look toward hope, even after long nights of darkness." His words resonated with Emily, stirring memories of painful nights and tearful confessions, yet also igniting a spark of determination in her heart. It was in that moment, surrounded by nature's quiet defiance, that she began to accept that the past did not have to define her future. Back inside, the Collins home buzzed with gentle activity. Mrs. Amelia Collins had transformed a spare room into a cozy art studio, a safe haven where Emily was encouraged to express herself through painting, sculpting, or even writing. Today, as Emily set up her easel, she felt a strange mixture of trepidation and excitement. With each brushstroke, she poured her heart onto the canvas, depicting abstract swirls of color that captured the turbulence of her emotions. Deep indigos of sorrow, fiery reds of anger, and splashes of gold that hinted at hope and renewal. Over the course of the day, Emily attended several therapy sessions arranged by Dr. Morgan, the compassionate child psychologist whose innovative techniques included music therapy and guided imagery. In one session, she sat in a softly lit room with soothing ambient music in the background. Dr. Morgan asked her to imagine a safe space, one where every fear was replaced with gentle reassurance. Emily closed her eyes and pictured a vast, serene meadow bathed in sunlight, where wildflowers danced in a soft breeze. In that dreamlike vision, she saw herself as a strong figure, nurturing Oliver with the gentle guidance of a loving family. When she opened her eyes, there was a calm certainty in her expression that had not been there before. The days turned into weeks as Emily slowly began to weave acceptance into her daily life. While the echoes of past trauma still whispered in quiet moments, they no longer defined the totality of her existence. Instead, they became part of a larger narrative, a story of survival, learning, and transformation. At the same time, Detective Harris continued his relentless pursuit of justice. Though his work remained heavy with the burdens of truth, he shared with Emily a determined optimism. In brief moments during his visits, he would recount small victories from his ongoing investigations, assuring her that her case was not isolated and that every effort was being made to dismantle the network of abuse that had plagued so many lives. One crisp afternoon, as the Collins family gathered in the dining room for a meal, an unexpected twist emerged. Laura Reynolds, the empathetic social worker who had been a guiding light in Emily's early days of recovery, revealed a piece of information that none of them had anticipated. During a routine check with local authorities, Laura had come across records that hinted at a long-lost connection between Emily's family and another foster child, a connection that might hold the key to understanding the full extent of the abuse Emily had endured. "Emily," Laura began, her voice careful yet urgent, "I found something in the records. There's another child, a girl named Isabel, who was placed in a foster home years ago under circumstances that bear a striking resemblance to your own story. The records suggest that your past might be more entangled than we initially believed." The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the room. Emily's eyes widened, and she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Could it be that the darkness that had once isolated her was part of a broader tapestry of pain shared by others? The possibility stirred within her a renewed sense of purpose. If she could uncover the truth behind Isabel's story, maybe together they could break free from the shadows of their past. Determined to learn more, Emily agreed to meet with Laura later that week for a confidential discussion. That evening, as twilight descended and the Collins home glowed softly with the warmth of lamplight, Emily and Laura sat together in the art studio. Surrounded by canvases and the lingering scent of turpentine and fresh paint, Laura laid out the documents she had collected. These records show that Isabel's case was closed quickly, almost as if the system wanted to forget it. But there are patterns here that mirror your own experiences, Emily. I believe that understanding Isabel's story might help us understand the larger picture of abuse in our community. Emily's mind raced as she absorbed the implications, the idea that she was not alone in her suffering, that others had borne similar burdens, both comforted and enraged her. "I want to know everything," she whispered, a fierce determination lighting her eyes. "If we can piece together these fragments of our past, maybe we can help prevent others from enduring what I did." Over the following days, as investigations deepened and therapy sessions progressed, Emily became a reluctant advocate, a symbol of resilience and a voice for the voiceless. She began sharing her experiences in small support groups, where other survivors listened intently, their eyes reflecting shared pain and tentative hope. In these gatherings, Emily's words carried the weight of lived experience, each story forging bonds between strangers, uniting them in a common quest for justice and healing. Meanwhile, at the Collins home, the dynamics of family life grew richer and more layered. Henry and Amelia continued to nurture not only Emily and Oliver, but also their own long-held hopes and regrets. One evening, as the family sat together on the porch, Henry shared memories of his own childhood, a time marked by loss and resilience. "I used to think that our scars were marks of defeat," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the starlit sky, "but I've come to realize that they are proof that we survived. They're reminders that even when life breaks us, we have the strength to rebuild." The words resonated deeply with Emily. She felt the connection between her own wounds and the broader human experience of suffering and recovery. In that moment, as the night embraced the world in quiet solidarity, she vowed to honor her pain by transforming it into a force for change. Her journey was not just about her own healing, but about shining a light on the darkness that had silenced so many. In the weeks that followed, collaborative efforts between law enforcement, social services, and community organizations began to yield tangible results. Detective Harris's investigation into the network of abuse uncovered several long-hidden cases, prompting a wave of reform in local protective services. Public meetings were held, and community leaders joined forces to advocate for stricter safeguards for vulnerable children. Emily, now more confident and articulate, was occasionally invited to speak at these meetings. Though her voice trembled with emotion, her message was clear. No child should have to suffer in silence. At one such community forum, held in a modest town hall adorned with banners of hope and unity, Emily took a deep breath before addressing the gathered crowd. "I stand before you not as a victim, but as a survivor," she declared, her voice firm and unwavering. "I have been broken, yes, but in the process I have discovered that my scars are not symbols of weakness. They are the proof of my strength, my resilience, and my determination to change the system that allowed me to suffer. I ask you all, let us be the guardians of our own futures. Let us stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves." Her words sparked an outpouring of support and applause. In that charged atmosphere, the message transcended personal pain and evolved into a rallying cry for collective action. It was a moment of catharsis, where the individual battles of one young girl became the beacon of hope for an entire community. As autumn set in, bringing with it a tapestry of russet and gold, Emily's transformation continued to unfold in subtle, powerful ways. She joined a local youth group dedicated to creative expression and advocacy. Here she discovered that storytelling could be a potent tool for healing, a way to process trauma and inspire change. With the guidance of mentors, Emily began crafting her own narrative through a blog and short video segments, sharing her journey with a growing audience. The support she received online was overwhelming, as messages of empathy and encouragement poured in from across the country. Her story, once confined to the shadows of a painful past, was now lighting the way for others who had experienced similar heartache. In the intimacy of her new life, the Collins family's home blossomed into a sanctuary of mutual growth. Even moments of conflict and vulnerability became opportunities for learning and connection. Mrs. Collins organized monthly family nights where everyone, from the youngest child to the elders, shared stories, played games, and celebrated small victories. These gatherings, filled with laughter and tender exchanges, served as reminders that family was not defined solely by blood, but by love, trust, and shared experiences. One chilly winter evening, as snowflakes danced gently outside the frosted windows, Emily found herself reflecting on the road that had led her here. Sitting at a small desk by a lamp, she penned a letter, one that was as much a promise to herself as it was a message of hope for the future. In it, she wrote about her journey from darkness to light, the pain of her past interwoven with the resilience that had carried her through. She described the beauty of the first sunflower she had received from Henry, the soothing melodies of Dr. Morgan's therapy sessions, and the warm, forgiving words of Detective Harris that had assured her she was never alone. As she sealed the envelope, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The letter was not an end but a beginning, a testament to her newfound strength and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. That night, as the Collins home settled into a quiet calm and the stars blanketed the sky, Emily sat on the porch with Oliver nestled in her arms. The gentle hum of the world around her was a lullaby, soothing and steady. In the soft glow of the moonlight, she whispered a promise to herself and to her son, that no matter what the future held, she would embrace each day with courage, compassion, and an unwavering belief in the power of transformation. As dusk settled over the city, the world outside seemed to pause in a moment of quiet reflection. In a renovated community center that once housed a forgotten library, Emily now stood before a modest crowd gathered to hear her story, a story of survival, hope, and the promise of a better future. The soft hum of chatter gradually faded, replaced by a palpable silence that invited truth to be spoken. The room, lit by gentle amber lights and adorned with posters championing child protection and healing, felt like a haven. It was here, in this place of transformation, that Emily had decided to share the long-hidden chapters of her past. The journey had been arduous, marked by heartbreak and the shadows of abuse. But now, on this stage, she was determined to turn her pain into a beacon for others. Taking a deep breath, Emily stepped up to the microphone. Her eyes, once filled with silent sorrow, now shone with quiet determination. "My name is Emily," she began, her voice steady yet laced with emotion. "And I stand before you not as a victim, but as a survivor and an advocate for change." A murmur of support and applause followed her opening words, fueling her resolve. Over the course of her talk, Emily recounted the turbulent days that had transformed her life. She spoke of the dark corridors of St. Raphael's General Hospital, the terrifying nights filled with the echoes of abuse, and the profound isolation that nearly broke her spirit. Yet she also recounted the moments that ignited her hope, the gentle encouragement of Nurse Grace Miller, the unwavering support of Dr. Carter and Dr. Morgan, and the tireless efforts of Detective Harris and social worker Laura Reynolds, who helped her find the courage to speak out. "Every scar tells a story," Emily said, her voice softening as she recalled her early days in the hospital. "I once believed that my pain was a punishment, that I was destined to suffer in silence. But I've learned that our scars are not marks of defeat. They are emblems of the battles we've fought and the strength we carry within us." A ripple of agreement ran through the audience as Emily described the breakthrough that came when she discovered not only her own resilience, but also a connection to a larger network of survivors. "I learned that my story wasn't isolated," she continued. "In my search for understanding, I uncovered records of another child, Isabel, whose journey mirrored my own in ways I never imagined. Through her, I realized that the system we live in has failed so many vulnerable lives. And it is our duty, our responsibility, to be their voice." As Emily's narrative unfolded, the room became a tapestry of shared emotions. Some listeners wiped tears from their eyes, others sat in reflective silence, absorbing every word. The gravity of her testimony was profound, but so was the sense of empowerment that radiated from her every sentence. Then came a moment that would change everything. Midway through her speech, as she recounted the unexpected reunion with the Collins family, a turning point that had given her a safe home and renewed purpose, a subtle pause filled the air. Emily's gaze shifted downward, and for a heartbeat, it was as if time itself held its breath. "I have one more secret to share," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. A hush fell over the crowd. "Years ago," she continued, "when I was still struggling to understand my past, I found a letter tucked away in an old box at the foster home. It was written in delicate handwriting, a message of hope from someone I had never met, a guardian angel, if you will. The letter spoke of a legacy of love and protection, a promise that even in the darkest of times, there exists an unwavering force that watches over us." Emily held up the yellowed envelope, its edges softened by time. "This letter was from Isabel," she revealed, her eyes glistening with bittersweet emotion. "She had been taken from her family under mysterious circumstances, and though we were separated, I always felt that our destinies were intertwined. Her words taught me that no one is ever truly alone, that our shared experiences bind us together in ways we can't even imagine." The revelation sparked a mix of shock and inspiration among those present. Detective Harris, who had long been a pillar of strength in her journey, stepped forward. "Emily," he said, his voice resonating with both authority and tenderness, "your courage in sharing not only your pain, but also the hope that comes from connection, has the power to change lives. Today, you have not only reclaimed your story, but also paved the way for a future where every child's voice is heard." The community center erupted in applause, a heartfelt outpouring of support that filled the space with a renewed sense of purpose. As the applause slowly subsided, Emily continued, "I stand here, not as a solitary figure of survival, but as part of a community, a family of survivors, advocates, and everyday heroes. My journey is far from over, and I promise you that I will continue to fight for every child who suffers in silence. Over the following months, the impact of Emily's testimony rippled far beyond the walls of the community center. She became a leading voice in a grassroots movement aimed at reforming child protective services and strengthening legal measures against abuse. With the guidance of Laura Reynolds and the steadfast support of Detective Harris, Emily helped establish a network of support groups where survivors could share their experiences, find healing through creative expression, and advocate for systemic change. Emily's newfound role as an advocate brought unexpected opportunities. She was invited to speak at schools, community centers, and even on local television, where her message of resilience and hope resonated with audiences of all ages. Each appearance was a testament to her transformation, from a quiet, frightened child to a dynamic, passionate leader determined to protect others from the darkness she once knew so well. In one particularly moving interview on a popular local news program, Emily recounted the pivotal moments that had shaped her journey. "I want every child who feels lost, every person who has suffered in silence, to know that you are not alone," she said, her voice steady and sure. "Our stories, as painful as they might be, hold the power to heal, to transform, and to create a legacy of love that defies the cruelty of our past." Back at the Collins home, the bond between Emily, Oliver, and the entire foster family deepened. Family nights became cherished rituals, filled with storytelling, shared meals, and moments of quiet reflection under starry skies. Henry and Amelia Collins continued to nurture Emily's passion for art and advocacy, providing her with the space to explore her creativity through painting, writing, and even organizing community workshops. Oliver, growing stronger with each passing day, was often seen giggling as he played with other children at a local park, his laughter a bright counterpoint to the solemn memories of his beginnings. Yet amid the celebrations of new beginnings, a twist of fate emerged that tested the very foundations of Emily's hard-won stability. One cold winter evening, as a biting wind howled outside and the snow blanketed the city in a hushed silence, a mysterious package arrived at the Collins home. Wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with a simple red ribbon, it bore no return address. When Emily unwrapped the package, she discovered a collection of old photographs and documents, a trove of forgotten memories that painted a picture of a family she had never known. Among the documents was a faded photograph of a smiling young woman with striking blue eyes and golden hair, a woman who bore an uncanny resemblance to Emily. Accompanying the photograph was a letter written in elegant cursive, addressed simply to "My dearest Emily." The letter revealed that the mysterious woman was, in fact, Emily's biological aunt, a guardian who had been forced into silence by circumstances beyond her control. The letter explained how this aunt had been part of a secret network of caregivers who had long fought to protect children from the very abuses that had scarred Emily's past. Although separated by fate, her aunt had watched over Emily from afar, hoping one day to reunite and pass on the legacy of resilience and strength. The discovery sent Emily's heart into a tumult of emotions. The revelation of her biological aunt, a figure shrouded in mystery and sacrifice, added a new dimension to her identity, a legacy of compassion and courage that had been waiting for her all along. That night, as she sat by the window in the quiet solitude of her room, Emily felt a profound sense of connection to the past, a lineage of protectors and survivors that spanned generations. In the weeks that followed, Emily reached out to local authorities and genealogists to trace the origins of the mysterious package. The investigation, led by Detective Harris, uncovered that her aunt had been a quiet hero in the community, a woman whose efforts to shield vulnerable children had been largely unrecognized until now. This twist not only redefined Emily's personal history, but also ignited a fervor within her to honor that hidden legacy. With the support of her foster family and the community she had come to love, Emily organized a memorial event dedicated to her aunt and others like her, unsung guardians whose sacrifices had shaped the lives of countless children. At the memorial, held in a beautifully restored historic building, adorned with candles and fresh flowers, Emily spoke with a raw vulnerability that captivated everyone present. "Today, we honor those who protected us when no one else would," she said, her voice echoing through the silent hall. "I stand here as a testament to their love, their strength, and their unwavering commitment to our future. Let us remember that every act of kindness, every moment of courage, creates ripples that can change the world." The event was a turning point, not only for Emily, but for the entire community. It sparked new initiatives aimed at reforming child welfare policies and encouraged local organizations to work together in creating safer environments for vulnerable children. Emily's journey from darkness to light became a rallying cry for change, and her story inspired many to step forward and become advocates for justice. As spring emerged once more, washing the city in hues of green and gold, Emily looked back on her journey with a sense of quiet pride. The pain of her past, though it remained a part of her, no longer defined her. Instead, it had become the cornerstone of her strength, the fuel for her advocacy, and the foundation upon which she would build a future of hope for herself, Oliver, and countless others. Standing on the threshold of a new beginning, Emily embraced the dawn with open arms. In her heart, she carried the legacy of her aunt and the countless guardians who had fought in the shadows, now illuminated by the bright light of a community determined to protect its own. With every sunrise, she reminded herself that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, the human spirit could rise, heal, and inspire change. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with us through this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story and the powerful transformation in Emily's story, be sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. We love reading your thoughts, so please drop a comment below. Tell us what moment moved you the most or what twist you didn't see coming. Your feedback fuels our passion to bring even more gripping, heartfelt stories your way. And remember, every like, share, and subscription helps us continue to produce quality content that not only entertains, but also inspires change. Stay tuned for our next chapter, where the legacy of hope and resilience grows even stronger. Let's build this amazing community together. Your support truly makes a difference. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.